Hello, church. Hope that you are doing good wherever you may be. I hope everything is going well and that you're staying safe and you're staying well, that everyone in your family is doing really well. This is another part in our Matthew series that we're doing, that we're studying through the book of Matthew, really digging into the scriptures. And I hope it's been a benefit to you. I know that all of us are having maybe a little bit more spare time than we would like. Some of us may have been, our jobs may have changed, or may have been kicked out of your job or fired or laid off. These are kind of difficult times, and there's a lot of time just staying at home and you can't really go out and do things. But hopefully, you're using that time to your best benefit, and you're using at least some of that time to dig into the Word, and that you're looking at Matthew. As we kind of go through it as a church, you can kind of go through it individually. And that's what I kind of hope the worksheets kind of help facilitate that. The worksheets, just you can read it and go through it, mark on it, and ask questions about it, and really study it. And then hopefully the thought questions also are thought provoking. They get you to think. I try to make them, and I put a lot of time and effort into them. They're not just simple fill in the blank kind of or true false kind of questions. They're very deep questions. Some that may not even have a good answer to, but they're there to help make you think. And so hopefully as you're watching these classes, you're going through these classes, you're also going through those worksheets so that you're getting the best and the most out of our study in Matthew. Today we're studying Matthew 7, verses 1 through 14, kind of starting to wrap up the end of Jesus' sermon with the to the people, kind of his first sermon in the book of Matthew. He's been talking about the people of the kingdom and what this kingdom has been looking like. If you remember, we haven't done a review lately, but if you remember, everything in the previous few chapters before this has been looking towards the king. Who's this going to be king going to be? Is this Messiah, this Jesus, is he the king? And over through Matthew, we say, yes, he's it. Yes, he's it. He used prophecy after prophecy, event in his own life, after event after his own life. And then we kind of come to, what is the kingdom going to look like? And that's what the Sermon on the Mount, chapters 5 through 7, have really been detailing. What does the kingdom look like? What are the people of the kingdom going to look like? And we looked at it through several things. We looked through the Beatitudes. We looked at different types of worship and how you should conduct yourself. We looked at loving your enemy and not hating your enemy, how you should be different from the rest of the world, even the spiritual world at that time. A lot of the things that are detailed in the Sermon on the Mount are against the Pharisees and Sadducees, the high priest, and those who were the elite religious people. They're directly against them and against them specifically. And so this sermon is geared towards getting the people of the kingdom to a higher spiritual place and to be in a place where they are thinking like God and they're acting like God. Jesus isn't calling us to do anything that he didn't do himself. Not a single beatitude or a thing that he says in the Sermon on the Mount does he not show in his life over and over and over again. And so that's why I think we can take. And now we're kind of coming to the end of the section and the lesson there. This chapter 7, first section, verses 1 through 6. Let's read and get into the Word of God. Judge not that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye when you do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take that speck out of your eye, when there is a log in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. We'll stop there, because that's kind of one parable, one thought right there. And he starts this section by saying, judge not that you not be judged, which may be the most quoted verse, maybe outside of John 3:16 of the entire Bible. People wildly misuse this verse all over the place. Now, is he saying that as Christians, as people of the kingdom, that we can never judge anyone at all? No, obviously not. Because, I mean, even in verse 6, we'll look, he says, do not give dogs what is holy and don't throw pearls before pigs. Well, don't you have to judge who the dog is and who the swine is? So you have to judge in that way. And then later in verse 15 through 20, we'll fast forward real quick right there. I guess I don't have it on the slide. But 15 through 20 is about the tree fruit, what is good fruit and what is bad fruit. Well, don't you need to judge what is good fruit and what's bad fruit to be able to do what he says in that section that we'll study Sunday? So those kind of things require judgment, and that's just what he says in this lesson. Throughout the Bible, God has called us to judge and to think critically about certain people. And when we think critically about some people's actions and we take those into account, sometimes that will have a negative conclusion to them. And we need to accept that negative conclusion at times. He calls us to judge and to help people through that. But what he is detailing here is not to have a judgmental attitude, not having an attitude that is constantly condemning and looking down your nose, which the Pharisees were a lot like. They went around and said, oh, you do this, you do that. How dare you do such a thing like that? I'm so much better than you. Kind of like the prayer, I pray 3 times a day. I fast regularly. I give my many alms to the temple. I'm so much better than you. How dare you do these things? And that's ludicrous to God's eyes. It's as ludicrous as the example he gives of trying to get a little maybe speck of wood out of somebody else's eye when you have a giant log protruding from your own eye. And it's supposed to be a ludicrous, kind of funny example because that's how God sees it. I mean, can you imagine somebody who has a big old 2x4 coming out of their eye trying to get the splinter that's in somebody else's eye? It's stupid. And so it's hypocritical to do that. The Pharisees were trying to get the Jesus and other people on these little matters like, well, if you picked up your bed on the Sabbath day and walked 5 miles, then you are violating the Sabbath. How dare you? But they were neglecting the weightier matters, the bigger matters like love and grace and mercy and kindness and loving all people. Those were the bigger matters. And so they had a spiritual plank in their own. And this really kind of comes down to one of the things that human beings are very good at. They are very good at ignoring their own weaknesses and their own faults by having an arrogance and pre-assumption of knowledge about someone else's situation. Okay, I will ignore all the faults and all of my weaknesses I have, and I will assume that I know exactly what is best for you. Even though I'm not in your shoes, I may not even listen to what you say. And this is something that all humans, every one of us, can be very susceptible to. We can have an attitude that we think we know best. Aren't the best parents, and I can speak from experience of being in this group, aren't the best parents those who have never had a kid in their whole life? You who are parents and grandparents know. Because the parents that, the young people who've never had a kid, they think they got it all together. And they think, oh, why don't you just do this? Why is that kid crying? You should just do this. They think they know it know it very well, and they got it all together. And yet, parents and grandparents, you know that there's a little bit more to it than that. But they think that they have such arrogance that they know how to take care of whatever situation you're in because they haven't been there. And it's just a human condition that we can all get into. Rarely should we give unsolicited advice. and only after we've dealt with our own issues. Again, he doesn't say, don't take out the speck from your brother's eye. He says, deal with your issues first. Because one, like if you have a big old, 2x4 coming out of your own eye, how well will you be able to deal with your brother's speck? How much will that brother accept your help because they see the hypocrisy that you have? So in our own lives, we need to get our stuff dealt with before we can help other people. So kind of as application, what is going on in your life? What is going on in your life that is kind of a 2x4 that maybe other people could see? And it may take some self looking at and looking at what problems do I have, because oftentimes certain problems can really hide from us and other people can see it more clearly than us. Maybe we can talk to some brothers or sisters or husbands or wife, your family will know for sure, of problems that they see you have, so that you can work through those issues so you can better help other people and take that speck out of their eye. Again, the speck doesn't need to be there, but it should be the person who can see it clearly should be the one to take it out. And they should be the ones that deal with that issue. We should not use our own yardstick for judging other people. I think that's what's talking about. Judge not, you be judged. We judge based on what we perceive as right and what is wrong, which is not always true. We need judged by God's yardstick, by what God sees as right and what's wrong. And for us to judge and make these assumptions about other people takes a fair amount of arrogance and pride. And that's something we may need to work on if we struggle with this situation. So it's not saying don't judge at all. It's saying be very careful when you judge and who you judge. And that's the main thing that he's getting at there. And then we have verse 6, which is very interesting because it doesn't seem to go with anything else or surrounding it. But it says, do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you. So how does verse 6 fit with verses 1 through 5 and everything else that he's talked with you about here? And I think it is kind of balancing out what he's talked about so far. In verses 1 through 5, he has said that do not be harsh with other people. Do not be overly judgmental to other people. But now he's saying do not be too lenient as well. And the image of the dog, do not give dogs what is holy, is kind of like what was put before the altar of burnt offering, their sacrifices, that's holy. And it's just giving that sacred piece of meat that they're offering to God and just taking it from the altar and just giving it to a dog, which they considered unclean, just unwashed and horrible. And so don't give dogs what is holy, and don't throw your pearls, something precious, something to be taken care of, before pigs who don't care whatsoever. They care more about the mud than they do pearls. And so don't take what is holy and what is precious and throw it to people who do not care, and that will take it to a place that it doesn't need to be taken. And what he's saying is basically directly giving you the lesson. If someone rejects the gospel or rejects good things that you give them, do not keep giving it to them. Don't just smother them with the gospel or trying to get them to constantly come to God or with goodness. And don't be a rug that you're just trampled on all the time. Instead, if they reject the good that you give, and we should give all men gospel or good things or whatever, and if they reject it and they reject you, you just turn aside and give it to someone else. We have numerous examples of Jesus telling his disciples doing this. In chapter 10, we'll have an example of that. Or Paul and his journey, how many times did he go to the Jews until they rejected him? They said, we don't want it anymore. We won't listen anymore. And then he turned to the Gentiles. And I think that's exactly what he's talking about here. Don't give the gospel, don't give the good things to people who don't appreciate it or won't do what is good and who attack you. Don't do that. And so don't be too judgmental, but don't be too lenient or keep trying to make yourself a doormat for other people. That's not good either. There needs to be a balance. And then we have this section, which I think is taken out of context a lot, but I think it's an amazing section. So verse 7, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and everyone who seeks finds, and the one who knocks it will be open. Or which one of you, if his son asks him for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a serpent? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who ask him? And this is an amazing scripture. Okay, so verse 7 says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you'll find. Knock and it will be open to you. Okay, let's review about everything that he's talked about so far, just briefly, because so many times this is taken out of context, especially in like the denominational realm. They'll say, just ask God and He will give it to you. Just you want that new house, just ask for it. Kind of the health and wealth gospel there. They've taken this so out of context, but don't remove it from the context that the Sermon on the Mount is in. Because what has Jesus said is the kingdom people. If you want to be in the kingdom, what do you have to look like? Okay? You have to be pure, like your Father is good. You have to be you have to seek first the kingdom of God and its righteousness. You have to be peacemakers, and you have to endure persecution and not return evil for evil. You have to love your enemies. You have to do spiritual things like praying and giving and fasting for the own spiritual benefit, not because you get it from other people. Not judge other people that often we want to judge. All these things that he's talked about. Go back and if you have a chance, you can pause this video. That's a good thing about technology. You can look back. Everything he's talked about in chapter 5, the Beatitudes in chapter 6, about loving your enemies. Do not be angry. Do not lust. All these various things. Okay. So keep all that in mind. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you'll find. Knock and it will be open to you. If you're someone here who's listening to that, do you think you have any shot of being that kind of person that Jesus says you need to be in the kingdom? Not a chance. If you're sitting here, listen to this, and you just read all those things, are you the type of person that thinks, yeah, I got all these things down. I'm a peacemaker, I'm pure, and I'm righteous. I always seek God first, and I love my enemies. I just love them. So are you that kind of person? Probably not. Neither am I. So how do you get that? And what Jesus is saying is you need to ask the Father. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. For everyone who receives and the one who seeks finds, then the one who knocks will be open. If you want this desperately for your life, if you want to become the kind of person that God wants in His kingdom, ask Him and He will help you. This is the kind of thing that James was talking about, James chapter 1. If you want wisdom, ask for it, but ask in faith. This is the kind of thing that he said over and over again. If you want to be this kind of person, you can do it, but only with God's help. Later on, when he talks about that it's harder for a rich man to go to heaven than for a camel to go through an eye of a needle. And, they said, how can anyone be saved? The disciples said, how can anyone be saved? And he said, with man it is impossible, but with God all things are possible. And this same thing that he's talking about here. If you want to be this kind of person, you can do it, but you have to rely on God. And he uses a simple analogy of a lesser to greater. And it's basically saying if a father who is sinful, like we all are, can give his son good gifts, bread and fish, and feed them, how much more will our Father, who is perfect in every way and created us, give us good gifts? And that is the very application he's making. If our Father and us can give our kids good gifts, how much more will our Father gives us good gifts? And so if you are struggling with something, and there's something in Matthew 6 or Matthew 5 or Beatitude or some part of this that you've struggled with, and that you looked at yourself and you said, I struggle with that issue. And maybe it's been years and years and years, something from your youth you may have struggled with, anger or lust or jealousy or hating your enemies or bitterness and not forgiving, whatever that is. Have you asked God to help you? Have you asked God to help you through? Because you can't do it alone. You need God to help you. And at the same token, you can't just say, okay, God, free me from my anger or lust or bitterness. You have to put forth the effort as well. And there's people, me and other people, that will help you through it as also. But have you asked God? Have you worked with God? It's so often that people who are struggling, one of the first things I'll ask them is, how is your prayer life? And most of the time, it's non-existent or very little. You have to have a good prayer life to be a good Christian and to be with someone who can get through these things, these difficult things. And that's what he's saying here. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you'll find. Knock and the door will be open to you. You can make it. But you have to ask, you have to seek, you have to knock, which insinuates effort on your part, a continual action of doing those things. That's what he's saying. And then he kind of sums everything up that he's really been saying in the golden rule. So whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets. If you follow this one rule, which is basically love. If you love, this is the principle of love. Do to others what you would want them to do to you. Like, take a proactive approach. And if you would want something done to you, go and do that for others. And if you live by this, you'll bless so many people. In this current situation that we have in, where a lot of people are lonely, a lot of people are maybe depressed, what would you want right now? What would you want in your life? Would you want someone to call, someone to send a card, someone to say I care, someone to just drive by and wave? What would you want in your life? Maybe it's something else beyond those things. What would you want in your life? Okay? Now go do that for someone else. That's how you help so many people. And this isn't an old law. And this isn't something new. So many people take this golden rule and they end it halfway through that verse and they think Jesus came out with this new law, this new rule, and that's totally different from the Old Testament. Now, Jesus says, for this was in the law and the prophets. This is something that the Jews should have been doing their entire lives, but they never did. They fought for their own. They kind of kept God's commands sometimes. They didn't follow it. And instead of having love in their hearts, they had malice and jealousy and bitterness and anger and lust and all these things that Jesus is insinuating against. Because if you follow this one rule, you'll do everything that he's talked about thus far. But it's hard. It's very difficult. And that's why he says what he says next. Enter by the narrow gate. For the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction. For those who enter by it are many. The gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life. And those who find it are few. This rule is so hard to follow. Because it doesn't say do to others before they do to you, insinuate a bad thing. Or do not do to others as you would not have them do to you, as Buddha said. Do to others. as you would want them to do to you. The way you want to be treated, treat others. And not many people will do that. You'll stand out. If you want to stand out in the world for Christ, follow this rule. And you'll be someone who's following the narrow way, the narrow gate, because not many people do it. The way is wide, and there's many people that go to destruction because it's easy to look after yourself and easy to take yours when you have it. But a kingdom citizen, a person of Jesus, disciple of Jesus, someone that is part of the kingdom, will walk by the narrow gate and do to others as you would have them do to you. And they follow the law of the prophets and Jesus Christ the King. That is the command that our King's given us. One rule, virtually. Follow this one rule, you will be part of the kingdom. I hope this has been helpful for you. I know it was very steps on my toes a little bit, and the things that he said, how I need to be better. Hopefully these things help you, and that this whole situation with the virus and everything, hopefully you can come out a better person than you were when it all started. And that you worked on yourself, and that you continue to work on yourselves, diving into scriptures, trying to be better people. Because that's the hope for every one of us. Hope you have a wonderful day, and that God bless you wherever you go, and that you may be a blessing to others.